presented by Dano Seasoning. Yum yum, get you some.
Welcome into the Sun Belt Syndicate, the official start of Season 3, and we're blocking the background for those of you watching live right now, but we do have a new background to share with you for the visual people at hand, and I'm going to introduce our guests here in just a second, but I want to take a moment to thank, first of all, collegefootballdogs.com for letting us bring this to you, as well as our sponsors, Dano Seasoning and W Energy, so thank you to them for getting us on air in front of you guys. First up tonight, and again, this is not the biggest game-by-game breakdown. We're going to try and cover all 7 teams here in the East, and we are going to start with the guys you see on screen right now. The Monarchists. Welcome Mike and Aaron to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
What's up, fellas?
Yeah. Hey. How you guys doing?
Fantastic. Awesome. Ready for some football.
You and me both.
Yes, I think all of us are definitely ready for some football. We've got some people already jumping into the comments. Of course, number one fan, Artie Cat, representing Texas State, jumping on. Dominic Ambrose, a writer from collegefootballdogs.com. And, hey, just got approved for the season opening kick. Was it Clemson and somebody else over there? He'll probably let us know. Of course, we cover the Sun Belt, so that's why I don't really know that off the top of my head. But a big deal for Dominic himself, and excited he gets to go take in something like that live. But back to the topic at hand, featuring the Monarchists. I got lucky enough to meet these guys in person last year as I traveled up to Norfolk to take in my first game at ODU. Mike and I were reminiscing about some of the stuff that I got to take part in before that game kicked off. I got to meet them in the parking lot. Great group of guys. Great job doing their podcast. They've got specialized things for each sport, essentially, it seems like, and some really cool nicknames to go along with it. You can look at their team store. But, guys, let's get right into the questions, and we'll start it off with what you guys think was either the biggest acquisition via the transfer portal or maybe a recruit that you think is going to come in and make an immediate impact for ODU this year.
I'll kick us off. Last year, we had maybe one of the smallest O-lines in the conference. We've added a lot of huge bodies on the O-line. We grabbed Zach Barlett from Illinois, Anthony Patt from Arizona, and Rick Moore from Boise State, and then Colin Henrik from Georgia State. And now we're going to have one of the biggest lines in the conference. Well, just monsters on the O-line. There's going to allow us to hopefully pass block this year. I think we were dead last in the country with most sacks allowed. So that was a clear problem that led to our other problem, which was time of possession. Dead last in the country in time of possession. Both two things we needed to fix, and I think those acquisitions will help in that regard.
Yeah, from my standpoint, we're going to stay on the offensive side of the ball, and you could go receiver or you could go running back. Big additions for both, but I'll just go with the running back because we lost a couple that had a lot of production last year.
Sure.
Obviously, we bring back Tariq Sims and Devin Roche, but 2 big additions in Aaron Young and Bryce Duke. Aaron Young came from Rutgers, Bryce Duke coming from Virginia Tech. They'll be impact players right from day one. This is an offense that is predicated to run the ball and run the ball well. And those guys are pretty dynamic, and I think they're going to be big additions to this squad.
So that leads into the next question. How do you think that's going to transition on the field as far as record is concerned for you guys? Obviously, you talked about losing some important pieces, but you just named quite a few that are going to come in and probably make a pretty quick and immediate impact. So what are your thought processes going into this season?
The schedule is daunting, and it makes this very difficult to answer because we're playing 2 P5s on the road, or 1 P5 on the road, 1 at home. In South Carolina at the road, Virginia Tech at home. We host ECU, who's expected to be much better this year, and we go on the road to Bowling Green. None of those are gimme games that we can just put as a win right now. And we play in the Sun Belt East, arguably the best division in all of G5 football. And then we get 2 tough teams from the West in Texas State and Arkansas State. There's not one game on there you can say, all right, that's a win.
Right.
So this year we could be a much better team on the field and not see it on our record. So it's a very tough thing for me to answer, But I'm very optimistic about this group. We're hearing great things about where the team is right now. That they had a very clean scrimmage last week, which first scrimmage of the year is clean. Is not something you expect to see. No. So I'm optimistic. We're all expecting a bowl game, and that's kind of where we're at right now. We're kind of expecting bowl games, and if it's not there, something went wrong.
Yeah, this season, too, is maybe the wild card for us. Is it's the first year in quite some time where we actually have our starting quarterback coming back. Now, of course, with Ricky, with Coach Ronnie, it's always a battle every year, but the continuity at the quarterback position is, I think, going to be important for this team, especially with as many new receivers as we have. That's going to be important to help them get all on the same page.
Absolutely. I feel that and understand where you're coming from in that regard. What about maybe the fan base's expectations overall? I mean, maybe even from the student side, or maybe from what you guys hear from other local people that are just trying to get into the team and build that base up, if you will. What are they expecting with this team? Because I know Ricky Ronnie came in from Penn State with a lot of desire to get this team really good, really fast, and he obviously has had some flashes there. But like you said, consistency maybe is where it needs to come together on the winning side. Is that something that people are really clamoring for as far as expectations go this year?
Well, it's been almost a decade since we've won more than 6 games in a season. Fans are desperate for a winning season. But we're also realistic, and we can see the schedule and how tough it is. I think a lot of the fans are expecting 6 games minimum, but understand 4 is reasonable. I'm not saying they're going to be happy with that, but our fan base understands where we're at and where we need to go. But yeah, we're kind of it's a tough spot because no one else is really playing a non-conference schedule like we are.
Yeah. Your non-conference schedule it's out of control. I mean, South Carolina on the road. I mean, then it's Virginia Tech. Yeah, it doesn't get easy no matter how you look at it. And then, like you said earlier, you guys play in the East. I appreciate the plug. Quite honestly, the best G5 conference out there. And you're right? Like there's no slouches really on any given Saturday. You could lose a game. So I think to your point, I think the realistic version of what you guys can get from a fan base is, or from the realistic fans, is that, let's temper our expectations a little bit. We may be, and I appreciate your earlier take when you talked about you guys may be better position, by position, but because of the schedule and because of what you guys have, it may not show up on a record. And that's a realistic view for sure.
So Aaron, do you want to start us off with what you got now on the screen for those that are not seeing this and they're hearing it instead? We've got their out of conference slate, which I'll start just naming off. They start the season at South Carolina, as TJ and Mike had just kind of mentioned, Saturday, August 31st. Then they host two really great matchups regionally, as far as I'm concerned. They host ECU. They're in Norfolk. Follow that up with, the in-state foe of Virginia Tech coming again, which, they've already beaten, for those that don't remember that. And then they wrap up going up the road a little bit to Bowling Green. So still somewhat regional matchup there. Aaron, what is the one that maybe you and or the fan base looks forward to the absolute most going into this year?
I'm going to give you 2 answers. I'm going to give you the one I'm looking forward to most. Until the next one I'm looking forward to most. The first game is what I'm looking forward to most. I've never been to an SEC venue, so I'm looking forward to traveling with Mike and some of the rest of the crew down there to make I'm sorry, I don't know if I can say that. To make a lot of you have to beep that out or put something to make a lot of noise and to let our team know that they've got folks that have traveled for them. I think that's going to be a cool experience for any of the Monarch fans that are able to get down to Columbia and, really take that in, especially football we've only had for 15 years. So we're still learning as a fan base how to really be football, to have our own team and football traditions and fans. So every time we get an opportunity to go see some stuff, you put something in your tool bag. I would say most fans, though, they're probably looking to the Virginia Tech game. I mean, that's always the big one. We have a lot of fans in the area that were Virginia Tech football fans before Old Dominion football existed. We've beaten Virginia Tech the 2 times that they've come here. So there's a lot of anticipation for that game.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. It's hard not to point to that one when it's at home, right? I mean, it's always nice to host the power programs. And Virginia Tech as a power program is very much expected to do very well this year. So, there's that. I will tell you from personal experience, and TJ, were you down at South Carolina for the app game?
So no, I was not, but I was actually about to go into that. But go ahead and you can give your perspective on it, because I've actually gone to a South Carolina Gamecocks game back in 2011 when I was working at Providence Hospital down in Columbia, South Carolina, and I can tell you that's all they have. And it gets crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say that if you go and you're planning to go as an ODU fan, or maybe you're just in the area and you want to see that one, I highly suggest doing it for the whole day, as much of the day tailgating as you can.
Yes.
Go walk over, see the caboose stuff. Like, that's really cool. There's going to be people everywhere. What I experienced was very inviting people. And then obviously it was topped off with a great game as App State came out on top. But regardless, at least make the whole trip worth it, no matter what happens on the field, by having a good time at the tailgate, because South Carolina fans definitely know how to do that properly.
Yeah, I second that. It is an atmosphere, quite honestly, outside of I played at LSU, so I couldn't obviously enjoy the tailgate situation there, but then also I went to Florida when I played Florida. I think it was back in 2013 or 14. I can't remember exactly when that was, but that was outside of those two. South Carolina has been my favorite stadium that I've ever watched a football game in. It was outstanding.
Well, guys, Mike, Aaron, any last thoughts to share with us? And also definitely plug yourselves in your show before we go over to meet the guys from Georgia State and State of Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this season. We finally have an offensive line. We have an offensive coordinator back for a second season, first time under Ricky. I think our continuity on the offensive side is going to surprise people in the East. So very excited about this season. Find us at odumonarchists.com. We have written content. We have podcasts. We have video. Join us. Go Monarchs.
Definitely.
Yeah, man. Go check out the shop. Jason Henderson, awesome player. He's got a T-shirt on there. Support him. NIL. Let's go.
Absolutely.
Go Monarchs.
One of the Bednarik Award finalists just named. So, and there's a reason for that, folks. For those of you that didn't mention it, he could become the #1 all-time leading tackler in all of NCAA history, which the other cool thing is the guy who currently owns that mark also played in the Sun Belt, goes by the name of Carlton Marshall, played at Troy. So we know what we're talking about when we talk about football in the Sun Belt. And the Monarchists and the ODU fans definitely know about one of the best linebackers in not just the Sun Belt, but the whole country. So, guys, we really appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time. And we continue to watch out for the more great content that you guys continue to put out each and every week following ODU sports.
Thanks for having us on, fellas.
See you guys.
See you. That was a good one there to start us off there, TJ.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about ODU. I know as we transition over to State of Atlanta, just kind of some last minute thoughts on ODU. And you and I were kind of in the same boat. We were rooting for ODU last year. There were they had a lot of good that came out of that team. Obviously, kind of things didn't go the way they wanted to towards the end of the season. But I think a lot like Mike said, they got better on the offensive line. I think they've gotten better at running back. Again, they lost some talent, but I think what they're going to replace it with is going to be great. And having your starting quarterback come back for the first time in a couple of years, I think is going to be huge for continuity's sake. So again, it doesn't help the schedule for sure. But I do think overall, they're going to be a tough team. They're going to be a tough out for anybody they play against. And that's for sure.
Yeah, I think we learned that as App fans last year. You go up there, Walter up there thinking you're going to win a game. You didn't win it. So absolutely not an easy team. Ricky Ronnie, again, coming from Penn State, that pedigree that existed, that culture, he's doing his best to bring it there. Kept Jason Henderson, which was a big win for him in the offseason. So, let's get right into this. The party is here, guys. We've got David, Ryan, and Tim all on the screen from State of Atlanta. Welcome to the show, fellas.
Hey, Joe. How you doing?
Welcome.
Thanks for having us, guys. Appreciate it.
I just want to say we did help Old Dominion last year at the end.
Yeah, you did. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I guess unfortunately for you guys.
Man, that was what a way to cap off a Georgia State and Atlanta season right there. You know, having our best season of the year. What was it? Lose 5 in a row and then cap it off with a loss at Old Dominion that we all had put a big Sharpie W in at the beginning of the season. Screw those guys.
I think I blacked it out. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
If you played that game over 10 times, that ending would have never happened. It's just was crazy. Everything that could go wrong went wrong.
The state way.
Those games happen. Oh, man. So I know that there is a lot of excitement. I mean, you guys had a little bit of a tumultuous off season there, at least for a little bit. I can tell you this before you guys even get started. So I was lucky enough to get down to Sunbelt Media Days as part of the media for the first time ever. And I got to meet a lot of these players and a few of the coaches. They were a little bit harder to get in front of. But Del McGee may not be the best public speaker of all time, but his players, I'm telling you this. Well, first of all, his players, if I had to give superlatives of the guys I want to party with or hang out with, not for any like crazy reasons, but just they were both full of personality and they just were just laughing with me the whole time. I was like, we got to get you guys on the show because people will just listen to y'all talk. Like, this is great,
Right.
you know? I told him about TJ and his little side gig with the grilling, and they started talking about food. So I'll tell you what, they're going to have some fun on the field in Atlanta this year. There's not any doubt about that. Now, I'll get to the specifics of what you guys think talent-wise and record-wise may look like. But I did want to start off with that because it does seem like a really fun team that you guys are going to have down there your way in front of you this season.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about it in the next few minutes here, but Coach McGee is bringing a whole new dynamic to what is going on in Atlanta with Georgia State, and the players being like that and having that kind of interaction is part of what he's doing. He's challenged every single player every day to shake hands with 3 people they don't know, to just engage, interact, and this is fellow students on campus. This is people around town. He is selling Georgia State as, the best place you can go and play college ball because, college ball, football as a whole has a lifespan, a short lifespan for most people. And what he's telling them is, there's not a better place to play college ball than Georgia State and Atlanta because the connections you can make here can last a lifetime. And that's just part of what he's doing. So I know what you mean because I watched the media days, was not there, but I watched them and got to see how those players interacted. And absolutely, he's building guys of great character, great charisma that are going to go well in life.
Yeah, I want to add, we've talked about it on our podcast a couple times. The energy that Coach McGee does not bring to a press conference, it's like real weird, low energy, and really juxtaposed with like Coach Elliott, who would always he always came in very passionate and loud and yelling and all that. But one thing we can definitely tell is the difference in the energy in the program itself. So where he doesn't bring the energy to the press conference, he's bringing it to the program. And so I'll take that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As long as it translates on the field, it doesn't really matter what kind of energy you bring to the podium.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it this way. You got McGee's kind of like Kirby Smart, right? Kirby Smart's not the greatest on the podium. He's not over the top like Elliott was, but McGee just brings this level of seriousness to the program that we just haven't had, honestly. And I don't know, all the fan base is feeding off of it. And the players, obviously, as you saw when you were down here, they're feeding off of it too. They love him.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I could tell that. I mean, the way, again, a little different delivery, but he would look to the side when he'd make a comment and both of them just look at him like side-eyed and just start cracking up. Like it was like they didn't even have to say words. Like they just knew what they were thinking. And I'm just like, the chemistry on that field is going to be there. That's what I'm going to say. The chemistry will be there. Now, again, how it translates, I'll let TJ take that question and hand it off to him to ask you guys. But
yeah, listen. So obviously, there's a lot to expect and a lot going on as far as what the upcoming season is going to bring. But I guess what's for you guys? What is the biggest acquisition in the transfer portal, or some newcomers that are coming onto the team? What's the biggest standout you guys have in terms of new players on your guys' team?
I'll take this one, and I want to cheat and say it is Coach McGee. He came in late. It's a very, very weird situation because we'd actually began spring practice. Coach Sean Elliott was I think we're going into the third day of spring practice when he announced that he had taken the tight end position coach at his hometown in South Carolina, where he never moved from as head coach at Georgia State. And so, everything got put on hold. Obviously, there was a whole bunch of recruiting that did not get to happen by McGee and his staff. He had to spend the first couple of weeks putting that staff together. So as far as a transfer class, he had the recruiting class that he was handed by Coach Sean Elliott, and then he had to put together a transfer class. And so, you may not see a lot of like standout stars. The big question is everybody's always about the quarterback, and we still have that question. We probably won't know who will be our starting quarterback until we take the field in Bobby Dodd Stadium here on August 31st. And Coach Sean had put in Zach Gibson, or brought in Zach Gibson from Georgia Tech. And so that was just a presumed starter. But then once McGee got here, he went and got Pittsburgh quarterback Christian Veyer. And so we assumed that maybe, you prefer to go with the guy that you brought. So it's been pretty interesting what we've seen from some camps. It looks like Gibson is still getting more of the first round snaps than Veyer may be. We don't know yet. But it's a stacked class. It's a stacked locker room. From everything we've been seeing, the running back room is stacked. The wide receiver room is stacked. We question marks at who quarterback is going to be, but we have a lot of good options there. And we had, good options before then. Talking to the voice of Georgia State, or listening to what he was doing in another interview, his big question is on the offensive line as being the only question mark that he really has on the program. So we'll see. But from everything that we've seen, this is a bigger class of Georgia State Panther than we've seen out there before. Just bigger guys all the way around. Taller, bigger, stronger, faster. It's just a different class of athlete than what is taking the field at Center Park Stadium in the past.
Yeah. And not for... I know we're kind of deviating from the questions that we have you guys ask. What do you think that comes from in terms of, guys being bigger, being faster, being stronger than what you're used to seeing? Where do you think that's coming from? I mean, how do you think the recruiting has helped in that regard?
Money, money, money.
Coach
McGee has embraced the NIL in a way that Coach Sean just never really paid attention to at all. And granted, it kind of happened while he was in his last year here. Yeah. But we have our all blue, all NIL collective, and from the very beginning, Coach McGee embraced it in a hard way. He's been a representative of it. He's been a face of it. He's been trying to fundraise for it in all the legal ways that he's able to do so. Right. And it's paid dividends. And he talks about it. You will not have a conversation with Coach McGee without him talking about how in today's college football landscape, it takes money to win, and specifically what it's going to take to get Georgia State to that Sun Belt Conference championship game and to win the whole thing. And I think that's what it is. He knows how important that is. He knows that players are getting paid to play right now, and he's making it happen.
Yeah. And with the NIL stuff, it's such a major change to the way that, college athletics is going, that the first couple G5 programs to kind of figure out our place in it, which like P5 programs is easy. They're just like raise a ton of money and give it to the kids. Right. Yeah. But for G5, you got to be a little more tactical with it. And the first couple G5 programs to really figure out how to work NIL are just going to be at such a crazy advantage. So where Coach Elliott was, like David alluded to, kind of a little put off by it. He'd make negative comments about it and sort of it seemed like he was reluctantly wading into it. Coach McGee is like, he's talking about it every single time. He's at the podium, and he just seems like he's better positioned to be one of those to put us as one of those programs that does differentiate itself with NIL.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to. The thing is with that, and I don't want to harp on it too much. Dominic and I talked about it 100 times. You've got to embrace it, right? It's not going away, right? So you might the only way, if you have on your recruiting trail, if players or prospective players see that you're not embracing that NIL, they're not going to come to your school, and you're not going to be good. So that at the end of the day, you've got to embrace change. And if listen, there's some old school people that don't want to have this happen, and that's fine. And whatever, you're not going to get the talent that you want. So anyway, I don't want to go off on a tangent on that. I know we got to stick to the script and but I'm very, very passionate about NIL. I want these kids to get their money. Having been a former college football player, eating ramen noodles right? On a Wednesday night when my coaches are eating steak and lobster, it's a big deal for me to get these kids paid. So
that's my thing too. They keep talking about all these little loopholes and things that they have to like figure out how to get the money to the kids and all that stuff. I'm like, guys, just pay them. Like,
just
quit with all this stuff.
What we do. Yeah.
And I'll just say real quick. I mean, if you don't embrace NIL, it's the quickest way to the bottom of FBS, and then potentially even packing it up and going down to FCS. Like, if schools don't do it right, you're gonna be in a world of hurt trying to catch up.
Yeah,
we're catching up.
Yeah,
I'll jump in real quick and say I echo all the thoughts that we just heard, and this is one big thing that I like about the conference that we're in is that we don't have one individualized private school that has a lot more of that money to hand out.
Right.
Thank God.
Why don't we want liberty in the
like Liberty?
Yeah. There's multitude of reasons, but one of them is they can bring in money that others can't. It's easier for them to fundraise or bring in the money and pay these athletes than it is. And so I feel like that's one thing that is really great about the Sun Belt is that all these institutions, for the most part, are pretty like-minded in the sense they're larger public institutions where that is kind of the same everywhere instead of having 2 or 3 teams in the conference kind of. I mean, Wake Forest is literally in the ACC because they're a private school. They're tiny as hell. They got all the money in the world, it seems like,
I hope at some point, the rest of the Sunbelt schools are hating on us like everyone hates on Liberty because of being the only school in a legit major metropolitan city with all the Fortune 50 companies, the Fortune 100 companies in Atlanta. If we can find a way to get some support with these corporations around here, we have the sources of funding are unlimited, and Coach McGee knows that. So,
when's Ludacris sponsoring y'all stadium?
When we drop $400,000 for him to come play a concert, that's the going price right now. So
I'm working on my letter to him. So.
We gave him an honorary doctorate of music. We gave him that a couple of years ago, and
that should be enough, right?
One would think.
So I know you guys got to get out of here in the interest of time. I want to combine these next 2 questions because I think it's important that we set sort of the stage for what the expectation level should be, also / what you guys are looking most forward to. So I'll start by asking you, Tim, give me your thoughts on where you think you guys are going to end up this season. Like, are you guys going to be better, worse, the same? What does that look like for you guys? And then what are the expectations of the fan base in that same vein, right? Because it's one thing to know where you guys ended last year and the excitement around this year and the talent and those kinds of things. But it's another thing, too, for the expectation level to be where it is or should be. So it kind of give me your, I guess, roundabout answer on where you think you guys are going to end up and what this season looks like.
Well, Vegas thinks we're going to end up, I think, with like 4 wins, maybe 4 or 4.5. I don't know. Realistically, I know it's not. Realistically, though, for the program in general, I think, we've all talked about this year in, year out. Winning 6 is kind of like the bare minimum. We don't want to. We have this tendency to like win 6, 7 games, 8, and then the next season fall backwards to 3, 4. Yeah. We're trying to build a tradition at Georgia State of just winning, and head coach, has done a really good job. Overall, I would say for this year, just expectation wise, it could be a bumpy year. But I think we do have the personnel and the coaching staff to bring us to at least 6 wins, potentially even 7. We have some obviously big matchups. You had those on the screen a second ago.
I was going to get to that next. What you guys are, I know you guys have got your non-conference games, but which of those are you guys most, and any of you guys can answer, what are you most looking forward to out of these non-conference schedules?
All 3 of us will say the same answer. Georgia Tech. It's
Chattanooga. Oh.
Chattanooga. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
I mean, it's no joke to say that this is the biggest game in Georgia State's history. Playing the team that is the closest FBS opponent to any other, 2 teams in all of college football, or no, at least FBS wise. So it's huge. This is something we've wanted from the very beginning. Obviously, Georgia, the big dog, no pun intended, in the state, but Tech being just a mile away from campus. Hell, their dorms.
Yeah,
they have dorms that were built to be Georgia State dorms back in the Olympics. I mean, these 2 programs are close. We've met. We know each other. So it's a big one. It's a huge one. And if we can, we feel like we have the ability to beat them. And I know that Vegas thinks we're like 21-point, dogs in that game, but it's going to be closer than that. I can't predict a straight out win, but if we do walk out of Bobby Dow with a win on August 31st, I will not be surprised.
Yeah, I think it is winnable, to be honest. I mean, and that, based on the talent level that you guys have and the talent that we see scattered across the ACC, Georgia Tech didn't do great in the ACC last year, right? And the ACC was not a powerhouse conference, right? You had Clemson, who was declining for sure. Yep. Florida State, who, obviously that was the class of the conference. And then you talk about maybe Carolina and NC State and I'm trying to think if there was any other standouts. None really that come to mind. That said, and they didn't even place very well in their own conference. I think Georgia Tech is a very winnable game for you guys going forward.
Yeah, their defense has been suspect, obviously, last year, and I don't think it's going to change a whole lot this year. Obviously, Haynes King is going to be number one QB, and he's good. I mean, I went to the Georgia Tech game, and Georgia won the game comfortably, but Haynes King did kind of carve out some really good runs and passes along the way. And even though the score looked a little closer, I mean, they were doing a good job against a elite defense. So, yeah. But going into this year, I mean, their defense still, I think they're saying, is going to be a little bit suspect. And I think if we have good quarterback play and we have a stacked running back room, we could pay dividends when we get on the field with them after we get to see their offense, because in game one, obviously, they're playing Florida State.
I think it's a perfect. It's a perfect storm for us. You got Tech over in Dublin, across the pond for a long flight, playing a week 0 game. Coach McGee gets another week of tape of the exact team that we will be playing. And I can't speak for Ryan or Tim, but I'll tell you what, I'll be pulling for Tech in that game against Florida State. I want them to beat Florida State, come back home, and then we take that win from him, and we get put in that top 25 poll to begin the season.
Well, it's easier to beat a team that's riding high than a team that's pissed off from losing, right? So
exactly. True. For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that the rest of the slate is very winnable. Chattanooga should be a win. Vanderbilt is obviously got talent, but,
winnable.
Yeah, very winnable. And UConn is certainly winnable. The toughest part about that is how far you're going to have to travel up in November, which literally could be snow in Connecticut at that point. You never know.
NC State gave you the blueprint for UConn last year. That was bad.
Well, we beat UConn last year, and it was not even close. We played at Center Park Stadium, and it wasn't close. We head up there. It's kind of a short week. It's a Friday night, so it's a little bit of a short week. But yeah, I'm not worried about that one. That's I wasn't worried about Old Dominion last year either. So
no one was.
I don't think a lot of people were. Some of them were caught off guard. Yeah. Well, guys, I really appreciate it. We're going to start to roll into the next team. But before we get out of here, tell the people where to find you and continue to listen to State of Atlanta and follow Georgia State Panthers.
All right, I guess I'll take this one. Yeah, State of Atlanta, stateofatlanta.com, on all the podcast apps, State of Atlanta, Twitter, State of Atlanta, Instagram, YouTube. We rarely ever post there, State of Atlanta, YouTube, at State of Atlanta, except for TikTok. It's State of ATL, apparently. Oh, wait, other way around. Instagram is State of ATL. They don't have long names, kind of like you guys with Sunbelt Syndicate on Twitter. You guys
have throw that in there. It didn't fit.
You guys need to have a cat mascot. The Sunbelt Syndicate. Right.
We'll use your guys' mascot, the Panther, as a cat.
We'll license it out to you. That's good.
There we go.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thank you guys very much.
Guys,
we're gonna get you back on later.
Have a good one.
Cheers, guys.
See ya. Oh, man. Rolling right along, man. This is going like a fine wine so far. Everyone's got a lot of good detail to share with us, and we won't delay any further because Michael's been waiting a little bit. We want to be sure to get him on to talk to us about some James Madison Dukes. Welcome to the program, Michael. Thank you for jumping on with us tonight.
Absolutely, and thank you for inviting us on JMU Sound Off. Really excited to represent the Dukes today.
Yeah, absolutely. Your other co-hosts, I do have them on screen. Like I said, I like to give credit to all the guys of the team, even though not all of them can all make it tonight. Jonathan, Taylor, Steve, and Michael. I think I got them all right there. And if I don't, let me know, Michael. But yeah, these guys are doing. There's a number of JMU podcasts. There's a number of other team podcasts, and I try and spread the love out a little bit. I haven't worked specifically with these guys on the Sound Off just yet, so it's nice to meet Michael, and I've seen them really. Montpelier Collective, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, I was going to say shout out to the Montpelier Collective. It's our NIL arm. They've been doing a ton of great work over the last year and a half, really embracing NIL at JMU, which has been a stark contrast in the past. But follow them well. They just launched their Champions Drive Bourbon. Just to give you guys a heads up, quick plug, Montpelier Collective. Give a follow to them and support the Dukes.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know if anybody in this conference that's a fan likes bourbon or not, but definitely check that. I mean, the label is one of those ones you just want to have on your shelf, first of all. So definitely check that, especially if you're a Dukes fan. I mean, you're probably finding out about us from seeing these guys on the show, not the other way around, which is great because that means you guys have a big following. But yeah, we jump right into it. First of all, you guys had a ton of turnover, and one of them being your head coaching position. So talk to us a little bit about what you expect to come out of this massive transfer portal and maybe even a possible early starter from the recruiting aspect that you may think is coming out.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? You're talking about we lost 55 players from last year, replaced them with about 64 players, majority of them through the transfer portal, 35 new head coaches or new coaches in general. Kurt Signetti left, took about half the team. A majority of them are going to be starting in the Big Ten next year. So really gives you a sense of the talent that we've had here. But yeah, this is unprecedented territory, right? Coach Bob Chesney's won at every single stop in his coaching career from D3, D2, D1, from Holy Cross all the way on. For those that have been watching FCS since we've left, Holy Cross has turned into a top 5 program. Coming out of the Patriot League, right? So really impressive. Taking that same mold, right? When we hired Kurt Signetti, he came from a program called Elon. Limited resources, lesser expectations, and came into sort of this plethora of resources at JMU, right? You've got the big stadium, you've got the athletic facilities, you've got the fan base, and really max that out. We're following sort of that same mold right now with Coach Chesney coming in from sort of an area where I don't think Patriot League even funds all 63 scholarships at the FCS level, now jumping up to the Sun Belt. I'm really excited to see what he can do.
Absolutely. I want to make mention of one player too, because as Bob Chesney moved over from Holy Cross, he brought probably his best defensive player in Jacob Dobbs, who I've seen on your guys' stuff. I got to meet him down at Sunbelt Media Days, and man, first of all, personality just flies out of the room. But to go along with that, expected to do big things as he literally jumps up a level and competes in obviously one of the best divisions. Actually, there's only 2 divisions left, but obviously one of the toughest places to play in all of college football in the Sun Belt East.
Yeah, no doubt. I think Jacob Dobbs, right, coming from Holy Cross, don't be surprised if, after a long and successful NFL career, you see him on the sidelines as well coaching one day. But you're talking about an extension of the head coach. He brings his middle linebacker. I think he was an all-conference, all-national selection on the FCS level, has won at every place he's been. It really brings along and just solidifies sort of the culture that Coach Chesney wants to bring from Holy Cross, as well as the production. So he's definitely one of the many names. As I mentioned, 64 new players that I think are going to contribute to this program. But Dobbs is embrace it through and through. The guy bleeds purple and gold.
Yeah, it's easy to tell. I don't know if he comes from a military background, but I feel like he's got that respect and he just wants to stand there at attention and tell you, yes, sir, and stuff I mean, obviously he can be relaxed and have fun with it, but you can see both sides of him. Either he had a military family growing up or he's just really got a lot of structure that bodes well for him on obviously training regimen and getting time on the field as well.
For sure. I mean, talking with the coaches, they were talking about during spring practice, even before that, he really captured the locker room during weightlifting, conditioning, really captured their respect, right, coming out the gate, which I think is crucial, especially in the world of the transfer portal when there's a lot of things moving around. He was able to really capture the culture and the team right off the bat.
Nice. So speak to that culture that's kind of existed and now being taught and learned by a bunch of these new guys, as you say. What is the expectation? What is obviously the desires to win a championship, because this is the first year you are technically eligible to be in the Sun Belt Championship and technically eligible to be in a bowl game, although we obviously know you guys made one last year. They did everything they could to keep you out, but you made it in there anyway. But yeah, what are you hearing? What are fans expecting? Because I don't know if it's fair to say they should just get right back up to the top with everything they've lost. And I feel like the expectation may be that high at JMU, though.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of mentioned at the start of the program, there are a number of new media outlets right now for JMU. There's a number of different podcasts. I think it's reflective of like the expectation and the passion that this fan base has for the program. So I think you hit on the head. I think it's championship or bust for the program, right? Like I think they're looking at how do we win the Sun Belt outright? How do we take any of those asterisks out of the way, even with 64 new players, even with the brand new coaching staff, championship remains like the end goal. And we all know championship run, bowl game, potential shot at the college football playoffs. It seems like outlandish, but at the same time, it's like that's what this program is built on. Even before Coach Signetti was winning championships at the FCS level, when you step onto campus, when you go into the Plecker Center, when you step on Bridgeport Stadium, it's all about winning. They have the expectation to win. Our prior coach was one of the first coaches or programs or teams to beat JMU at Bridgeforth in like 5 years. So that's sort of like the proudness as coming out of the program. It's like it's championships all around. It's all about winning rings.
Very nice. I think that is absolutely understood. I mean, you can't really have this train rolling along as well as you guys do and expect much of a drop off. And then we've got the out of conference slate up on the schedule now, or up on the screen now. So it's really regional, really. Those first three matchups specifically, and then Ball State not terribly far, but you don't even have to go there. That's obviously one that's coming to you anyway. What do you guys think of this out of conference slate? And I would assume, again, just like a lot of them, we've got one circled a little bit more than others. But what do you think here?
Yeah, it seems like it's like the season of North Carolina, right? Starting off in Charlotte on 8/31, playing Gardner Webb at home, going back to UNC, going back to North Carolina, and then having a MAC team. I'm not going to say this because it's just game one, but I think really everyone thinks about the UNC game playing against, I think, Max Johnson coming out of Texas A&M. They got Omarion Hampton. But I think really like it's the Charlotte game. It's an American conference team. It's the first time we've played Charlotte in 10 years. Back when Charlotte was a CAA member, we beat them 48-40 in a shootout. That was a very different program, I think, at the same time, right? Like expectations were high. We had Vad Lee as our quarterback, also from North Carolina. I think that's the big game. You think about Biff Poggi, once again, another year of P5 transfers coming into the program. They've got Max Brown from Florida to really solidify the quarterback position. And they've got a guy named defensive end Demon Clowney that I'm really interested to see how we match up against, right? So I think that's the game that's most intriguing. It's the first time like this coaching staff is going to be together to coach this team in a game situation on the road. There's going to be a lot of adversity. There's going to be a lot of distractions. There's going to be a lot of eyes, but you're also going to see a lot of purple in those stands. I think with the state of North Carolina, there's a ton of alum in the Charlotte area. I'll be there. I know there's at least a few hundred that I know that will be there as well. It's going to be a lot of purple, and I'd like to think it's going to feel like a home game at Jerry Richards Stadium.
Nice.
I would say yes. Knowing what I know of Duke fans, that their willingness and ability to spend money for the big games, not that Charlotte's all that big, but like you said, it's the first one. So it's going to be one a lot of people want to get to. Charlotte's obviously a city where you can go downtown. It's not like TJ and I have ever done it or anything, but you can go downtown and have a good time. So
and also
not a bad place to start.
Yeah, and also too, Charlotte doesn't necessarily fill out their stadium with home crowd either. So I went to a UNC Charlotte versus Maryland game. Buddy of mine who I played with at App State, he's the offensive line coach for Maryland, and they don't pack their stadium out. So I got a feeling that the Dukes are going to kind of roll in there and take over.
I hope so. I mean, it's an easy drive. Like I said, a lot of people in Charlotte. For me, it's a 3-hour drive down the road. That's not gonna be that bad at all for folks in the Richmond, Virginia area. That's straight down 95 to go a little bit west. You'll be right there. A lot of our alums, a lot of like folks coming from the business school. Like obviously, Charlotte's like a well known for their financial banks, right? Like so, I think we'll be in a good place there. I'm really excited about that. But I mean, all in all, I think the program's in a really good place. I mentioned earlier around the 64 new players. And I think the success or the what we've done from a transfer portal perspective, if you look at last year and even the year before, taking guys that have been productive, that have won, that have been significant contributors at their prior programs, whether it's FCS or FBS, we've done the same. We brought in 5 DBs. I think if I did the math, carrying over 160 games of experience. So obviously when the bullets are flying and you're trying to figure out who the matchups are and you're trying to figure out who's going to cover who, you're bringing a lot of older 5 to 6 year players that have been in meaningful games, and that's across the board, right? Going to our offensive line additions or defensive line additions, linebacker additions, which we hit on earlier, all across the team. I think that brings a lot of excitement and also keeps the fans bullish that we'll have another successful season.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Yep. I think, man, I don't really know what else there's to say. Michael, that was really well done, man. And it's like he didn't even look at anything. He just everything off the top of the head. See, this is why we bring the experts on, folks.
That's why he's the professional. Right?
None of the guys. I'll give credit to every single person who's been on here so far. There's like no notes in front of anybody. Just rifling these information off the top of the head. It's great. I love it. It's why we do it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Once again, like shout out to JMU Sound Off. Like I think what we want to do here is like we really want to be like the fan base podcast. Like what we're trying to do is really get the sights and sounds from the ground, from the fan base, from the players, and really be obviously with NIL and transfer portal, it's a lot to keep up with, and how we make the program more personal for the average fan that's going to see JMU for the first time. That's really the end goal here. And continue to like promote JMU. I graduated more than 10 years ago, and there was maybe 1 or 2 podcasts, if that, at the time. And now there's countless. And I think it's just like the passion, the fandom, it continues to grow. We had Game Day for the 3rd time in over a decade, in less than a decade. Like, what other program can say that? I know, TJ, you got the App State flag in your background, so I'm a little salty.
I was going to say, I know another program that can say it.
But, we want to keep the tradition alive. You'll also see, like, with the passion also comes, like, we're very if Charlotte doesn't turn out to be what we expect, right, I'd be curious to see how we turn as a fan base, right, and like what type of leniency or what type of expectations, flexibility we'll give Coach Chesney and the staff, because it is new players, new scheme, all in all. But at the end of the day, right, like championships and winning is what we're all about.
Yeah, 100%. That is well known. I got to take in Game Day up there last year, which was
nice.
Phenomenal. I've never really been to a bad one, but yeah, JMU fans pumped and excited for that. And that was a full day, right? Because that was a night game. It wasn't like the game day and then right after it ends, you go to the stadium and take in the game. There was still some time in between there before that game started. So it was a full day. Yeah.
Exactly. I was like, it was like noon, or I think they were wrapping up, and I was looking at my buddies. I was like, I think we should go drink now. I think let's go. I know once kickoff started, like if you were there, the atmosphere right at kickoff was unbelievable. We had a very much well beveraged individuals that bled purple and gold that day. So I think it was fantastic atmosphere.
I like it.
They've got some good stadium beers too. I did get to try. I think my dad and I both had a different kind and just tasted each other's just to see what the whole variety was. It was good stuff. I don't remember. Is there something about Crown?
Like 3-notched, and like I think those were the beers that were there.
Okay. I'll
be honest. Usually by game time, I'm straight to my seat, and we're in the zone at that point.
Yeah, you don't need anything extra, right?
Exactly.
Oh, man. Well, Michael, we really appreciate it. Give one last shout out to where everyone can find you guys and JMU Sound Off across the board here.
Yeah, it's at JMU Sound Off. You can find us on Instagram, X, wherever you find your podcast. We're also on Threads as well. We're also on YouTube. Just to give you a heads up there too. Also follow Montpelier Collective. Also live on Instagram and Twitter. Like I mentioned, we're rolling out the Champions Drive Bourbon. I think it's going to be coming here in a couple of days. For those that donate to the collective and donate to the NIL fund to help supporting the Dukes, they'll have be able to purchase the bourbon. I think there's only 1,200 bottles. So it's a limited edition. Wow. So first come, first serve. Like get you in the queue and support the Dukes.
Nice, absolutely. Well, Michael, thank you very much, and we'll definitely be having you guys on again later this season.
Yeah, let's do it. Go Dukes.
Woo.
Like that guy.
They got their stuff together over there at JMU. Let me tell you, they got a bourbon. They got a good team. They're they're not rebuilding, they're reloading. So definitely watch out. We got Randy jumping on. Randy's been on a few times, letting us know GATA. They're coming up here very soon. GATA Talk is in wait. We do have maybe a guy you recognize here a little bit, TJ, is Brandon is jumping on the program.
Big
so
bro,
we are
what's up, man?
you to the
Man,
program.
you could have done a better picture than that, man. I could have gave you some or something, man.
There's no better pictures of you.
I can see how this is gonna go right now, TJ.
Start off real
Cool. Cool.
Oh man,
I got you.
Listen, it's all. Look, I only take shots at people that I love.
Oh yeah, man. Got to. How you been doing, buddy?
Good, man. How you?
I need one of those plates sent down here though.
I got you. Listen,
Nah,
look.
man. Every time I see you, you don't be cooking.
No, because when I'm at the game, somebody else is cooking. Usually Scott Sutter.
Okay.
But I got you.
I gotta come visit. I gotta come visit, sit on your front porch, and eat some good food with you, then, man.
Yeah, hey, that'll work. And you got a place to stay. I got an extra bed. This time you ain't got to sleep on the couch. Look, we eating shrimp and steak these days.
That's how I go, man.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Brendan, I grabbed this one, and I'll tell people why I grabbed this one. This is specifically a picture of you and Adam Winton, obviously to your right, I think, on this picture. So, yeah, I grabbed it because it was from your guys' broadcast team, and you're obviously doing the broadcast for the ESPN Plus side of things for App State and continue to do that. What is this going into year 3 for you or year 2? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's year 3 of being a radio analyst for App State, being up there in the booth with Adam Winton on Saturdays, man. It's been a joy to get started with Adam 3 years ago. And I look forward to football season now even more because I got something to do and calling football games for App State.
I'll just add this too. You do a hell of a job on there, man. I watch the games on ESPN Plus. I got Hulu and ESPN Plus Live. I'm not just saying this because you were my mentor at App State and are still a good friend of mine. I'm saying this because you genuinely and truly do a really good job. The passion's in your voice, and you're unbiased too, right? You're calling app games, but you're also calling like you see it. And I think that there's a lot to be said for somebody who gets on these shows and on these podcasts and things like that, who are just a homer, and then somebody who everyone else has to listen to. So I really applaud your effort, what you do, how you do it, the passion that you bring. It's awesome to watch, man, especially when I can say, I know that guy, right?
Yeah.
I learned from that guy. So that's awesome, man. Keep that up.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Football is something that I've been in love with for a long, long time. And, man, being able to sit up in the booth and call what I see on the fly, man, it's a good thing to be able to do. Being a former player, especially being at App State Mountaineer alum, and seeing things and how the program has transpired since we first won in 2005 to now, and to be able to get contact with the coaches, the players, listen to meetings and understand the scheme, that goes a long way when it gets time for getting in that booth to start talking football.
100%. 100%.
Speaking of talking football, TJ, I'm going to let you handle the questions to BT on this one. Let us know about some App State football coming into this season.
Yeah, man. Obviously, everybody's excited. New seasons, new players, new transfer portal players, new recruiting players, those kinds of things. Tell us what you're most excited about. What are some of the players that you think are going to make the most impact immediately that are not already on the team or maybe just getting in from the transfer portal?
So I think this year some of the biggest impacts are going to come from the defensive side of football. You lose 3 guys right now from the team last year who were in NFL training camps, with Nick Ross being with the Jets. You got Thunderbird being with the Buccaneers. And then you got Parker being with the Jags. Those are guys who were valuable last year. But this year, Coach Clark and staff, they went out and picked up some guys to bring it from the transfer portal. And one guy that I'm looking at is Jason Chambers. He plays the star position. And another guy is Miles Farmer, who basically he's wearing number 4 as Nick Ross did last year, and he's playing the same position. So people may think it's Nick Ross back out there because Farmer has dreads as well. But this is a guy coming in from Syracuse. Man, I went up the fall workouts and got a chance to lay eyes on these people. And, man, this kid is some good size. So on the defensive side, the transfer portal helps us in the back end. We're getting some guys that play the safety position. We got another corner that came in from Illinois, Elijah McCantos. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. These guys are going to come in and provide valuable time because that's where they're needed at. We need some depth on the defensive side of the football. and especially in that back five, with Coach Sloan's defense really called the back five.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to be very valuable. Then on the offensive side of football, you got to get guys up front. In order for Joey to have the same season be better than last year, he's got to get some blocking up front. And right now, you got a couple guys that have come in and transferred. A guy, Hollifield from Virginia Tech, a kid from Auburn. I think his last name is Lango. These guys have come in and fighting for playing time right now to be starters on the offensive side of the football up front. They have another kid. He's 6'7", 340, came in from Southern Cal, Andrew Dewart. I mean,
I heard about Dewart.
It's a mammoth of a man, and I think he's going to have a chance to become a starter once they break camp and get ready for ETSU August 31st. But this is where the Mountaineers are going to rely heavy on the transfer portal this year. The guys up front, because you're replacing a lot of starters on the offensive side of football. Then on the back five on the defensive side is where you're placing some guys as well. So these guys coming in the transfer portal, I think they signed 15 to 16 guys in the portal. 9 came in the spring, 7 came in December. So they got some guys on the back end and look for guys to come in and play immediately to help with some of the depth that they have that they're going to need on the Mountaineers football team.
Yeah, no, that is awesome, and it's calming my spirit to hear it. First of all, because I was listen. We lost. You think about the depth that we lost and the talent that we lost. Obviously, all great players. I'm wishing them the best in the NFL and what they're doing. But when you talk about replacing those kind of guys, you don't just find them right out of high school, right? I mean, you and I played this game. I think my freshman year when I came in, it was myself, Leonard Love, and Trey Hennessy were the only 3 freshmen to come in and make an impact, right? So it's not something that's expected as freshmen to come in. So when you talk about the recruiting trail, that's one aspect of it. But now this transfer portal has opened up a whole new avenue where player development isn't necessarily – I don't want to say it's not needed as much because you always want to develop players. But the other part of that now is you got guys that you can come in and plug and play. And as an App State alum and as a football fan in general who wants to see good football, it definitely does something that makes me more excited to watch the game, knowing that we've got some guys that can come in and be dogs right away. So that said, that kind of leads into the next question that I'm asking you is expectation, right? We did really well. There were some games we dropped that maybe we shouldn't have dropped last year. What are your expectations for the season coming up? And then from a fan base perspective, how realistic should the fan base be in terms of what they can expect out of App State this year?
I think expectations are going to follow where they were, where you've stopped off last year. Obviously, we made it to the conference championship. Didn't leave with a win, but we made it there. Then we won a bowl game. And that's some of the goals that Coach Clark sets forth is, win your conference, win the East, get a chance to play in the Sun Belt championship game. If you win it, good. Position yourself to get a good bowl game. And now with having a 12-team playoffs, you never know what could happen. Right. App State's name could be mentioned in one of those 12 teams at the end of the season that gets in the playoffs. But I think expectations are there. I see this team. Last year we were 9-5, 5-1 at home. We got to do better on the road. This year, road games are going to be very, very tough for us. We got to go down to Coastal. We got to go to Clemson. Then we go to Georgia Southern this year again. So you got to be able to win these road games because they become crucial when it comes to conference play. So the expectations for this team again is probably going to be, I'm going to say 9 to 10 wins for the team this year. Got a good out of conference game coming up week 2 with Clemson. Then we also go to Greenville the following week to play ECU, which these 2 out of conference games mean something to us. Right. And then you come back 2 weeks later with Liberty. So these games kind of mean something to us and get us prepared for. I heard Dominick talking earlier about the toughest, one of the toughest conferences in all the college football in that Sun Belt, and specifically the Sun Belt East. So fans they're going to know that Joey's coming back. He's got his top receiver. He's going to have one of the best running backs in the conference, and Kanye Roberts this year, who's going to get the bulk of the load. Him and Anderson Cowles are going to share it. So the expectations are going to be kind of high for the Mountaineers. And sometimes, as fans, we can blow like the wind and not be as cheerful for our Mountaineers when they want to be. But I think if they just stick to the course and understand it, because last year a lot of people didn't believe this team can make it to the conference championship, and they did. So, I look forward to what the Mountaineers are going to do August 31st when ETSU comes to Boone. I know Coach Clark will have those guys ready.
Yeah. That schedule, like you said, it's exciting to look forward to. I mean, obviously, I'm looking forward to the Clemson game. I want to be able to get down there. Not going to be able to do it this year, but I was excited about it when I saw them. And I know the three of us know this, having graduated from App, and we're homers, and we. But it's also a very winnable game, right? It's not, it's not one of the Clemson isn't, this isn't 2018 Clemson, right? This isn't, Deshaun Watson Clemson. Like this is a Clemson team that can be beat. And for the God knows I don't like Dabo Swinney, so it would do my heart so good to beat the Grinch of college football, right? I really, again, if we don't win, listen, I want us to show up and do really well.
But I didn't give a fight.
Really win.
Yep, but I didn't give a fight because obviously these I call them these power conferences now know who App State is.
Yeah.
Obviously what we've done in the last couple of years, playing some of these SEC teams, these ACC teams, and some team in Raleigh took us off the schedule because they were scared of us.
How about that?
And how about that? And so they don't have a chance in the ACC, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Just think about that. So getting a chance to go down to Death Valley, I believe it's a 6:00 start. I think it's a night game start.
Yep.
So going down there, September the 7th is going to be a good time for the Mountaineer program to put our name in the national spotlight again. And I can assure you that, like, I'm a South Carolina born and raised person. I can't stand Clemson. I was a Gamecock fan, so I don't deal with Clemson. I don't like anything orange. I drink orange juice, but that's about it. And so, no, I'm not a fan of Clemson. I hope we go down there and put it on because I've been listening to some of the ACC media days because I'm here locally in Charlotte, and that's where they had the ACC media day a couple weeks ago. And it's like, what is Clemson? Who is Clemson? And so, they're returning their starting quarterback in Cade Klubnik. They got some receivers that are healthy this year to come back. So we look forward to see what they got coming in that second week.
All right, one game we haven't talked about, and it's a big one, right? Group of 5 early season matchup. The next crew we got coming on, GATA Talk, Georgia Southern hosts Boise State. That's going to be a big one. This one is a little bit later than that, but Liberty coming up the mountain to App State. Actually, they're on a mountain too, if you want to call it that. I don't think their elevation is as high. But what are your thought processes going in there to that Liberty one?
Hey, it's a chance. Obviously they're coming to see what Boone is about. And they're September 28th is going to be a showdown of some of these top group of 5 teams. Obviously they made it to the playoffs. I never say make it to the playoffs. They made it to a New Year's Six bowl. Yeah. And it didn't go as well. It didn't go so well for them. But it's getting on that stage. If you're able to get on that stage, those guys who are able to come back, they understand what it's about. So this is a chance. It's probably going to be a high game, and as you call them, a group of 5. It's probably one of the highest rated games in a group of 5 that week. So there'll be an interesting opponent for to come up to Boone. I don't believe App has played Liberty before. I haven't checked my records on that.
I don't think so either.
They did back in 20. I don't know the year, but they lost in overtime to a team that. And Liberty fans will tell you this: they had no business being in that game, but App kind of blew it towards the end. And I don't think at that time Liberty wasn't what they are now. Yeah. They were the one AA, the FCS team at that time, and they went in there and beat App in one. You know what it was? It was one of those transition years for App.
I was curious. I think it was maybe the first or second transition year. That maybe we weren't bowl eligible or just became bowl eligible. Actually, I think it was the year we weren't bowl eligible because the first year we only lost one game, and that was the out of conference game, and I can't remember who it was to. But we went basically 10-1. I think that whole season.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. I think Liberty's coach is Chadwell that used to be at Coastal Carolina. So he's going to have that familiarity with App State. App State starting quarterback who started week 1 last year, Ryan Berger, transferred to Liberty. I'm not sure what his status is and where he's at on the depth chart, but I think they returned their quarterback who did some pretty good things for them last year. So they, obviously got another person that's over there that's familiar with App State and the brand and obviously the program since he was here last year. So I know Chadwell will have his guys ready to come up the mountain on September 28th.
Yes, sir.
All right. I think that wraps it up. And, I may have staggered this on purpose, that I went back-to-back with App State, followed up by Georgia Southern. It didn't really matter which way it was going to go, but these two were going to go back-to-back. I can tell you that, and that was purposeful on my part. Brendan, before we go, let everybody know where they could follow along. Obviously, you do what you do during the season, but let them know where to find you on the socials, man.
Yeah, I'm social media. My IG handle is Coaching Style. I don't have X, aka Twitter, Facebook. I really try to stay on social media a good little bit, but I got to use it to do my job kind of during football season and things that nature, so I can get some news and some content. But man, anytime, always check out Nothing But an App State podcast with the guys Adam Witten over there. And so they're always talking App State football.
Very nice, man. Well, we really appreciate you and your time this evening. And TJ and I will certainly be talking to you down the road here.
Absolutely.
No doubt. Appreciate it, fellas. No doubt, man. Love y'all guys.
Yeah,
go out.
Take it easy.
All right. See, I told you, TJ, we got GATA talk coming up right here. I do like the logo. I like how it is what it is, says what they are, who they are, and it's just a sharp looking logo. I can't hate on the logo.
Yeah, it is. I like it. I like it. It takes a lot for me to say that I like anything that Georgia Southern has, right? So I'll say I like it, and we'll leave it at that.
There we go. So with that being said, let's bring in Matt and make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. Monty?
Yeah, it's Monty. You know it.
I was going to say Monty.
Your co-host.
I've heard that too, and Money, and all the things. All good.
Nice. And you co-host your show with Cody Anderson. So
I do. Yeah, and Cody won't be able to make it, unfortunately, but I appreciate the shout out about the logo. Simplicity, I think, is key there.
Yes.
Tradition, just clean and simple. I think really summarizes Georgia Southern.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, and I've heard this from a lot of people, and probably even mistakenly seen people refer to one or the other when they talk about Penn State and Georgia Southern both having those very clean, simple uniforms, and simple is not in a bad term. Like it's sharp looking because it is essentially, in the nicest way, like a bare bones look. But it's nice because it's historic. It's always instantly recognizable, essentially. So I do like that, and the people in Boone can understand what I'm talking about, because Watauga High School is a little high school up there. Actually has a very similar look to both Georgia Southern and Penn State, with the white and blue simplicity look. They don't go crazy with the logos and the flashy stuff.
Right.
And people like it. And there's a reason people like it, because it looks sharp. So, and Matt, you're the one that's actually all the way out in Colorado. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. I'm on the Front Range, kind of in the shadow of Colorado State University, actually, in Fort Collins. So. Oh,
okay. That's a heck of a stadium right there.
It is, yeah. I was just telling my wife I hope to get. We've been up here for almost 2 years now, and hoping to get up there for a game. They're about 20 minutes away from us, and live down near University of Colorado. Before that, right before the Dion hoopla, and now, back then you could get a ticket for like $5 to the games. Now they're like impossible to get. So.
Nice. Yeah, that's not going to be the same for a while there, I'd assume.
Yeah.
But Chris Bolton's giving you a nice Hail Southern there.
I saw Randy was on here earlier. Shout out to Randy. He's a follower of ours.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome, man. I'm glad people come and go and find each other like this, because it's what makes this Sunbelt thing fun that we do. So we've heard from all the others.
Yeah.
And I was listening to you guys getting back into it, because I know you guys took a summer break as well. I was listening to it while I was actually in all places Louisiana, driving down there for Sunbelt Media Days the other week. So getting back into the GATA talk. But tell us about who you guys expect maybe to be an instant difference maker on the field via the transfer portal. Possibly, it seems like everybody's transfer portal, right? The recruits probably aren't jumping on the field right away, but maybe you guys have someone there. If not, certainly a guy that's probably in the portal that you look forward to seeing on the field early this year.
Yes, I don't know if there's one. I've given a lot of thought to it. I think in the past, right, quarterback stands out. Obviously, that's the big question mark, is who's going to be the quarterback of Georgia Southern. Last 2 years, we've had one and done loaners, right, and Cal Van Treese transferring in from Buffalo, and then Davis Brin transferring in from Tulsa. The positive there is we have a quarterback battle for the first time in 3 years in the Clay Helton era. And I think all three guys, from what I've seen and from what Cody's seen and heard and read about, I think they could all do the job. One of those guys is a transfer, is Dexter Williams, transfer from Indiana. Possibly, arguably, the most pure talent, strongest arm, most athleticism on the team. Also the most experience with an asterisk because he hasn't played in a while. He hasn't played since 22. He did get starts against at Indiana, against Penn State and Ohio State. So he knows what it's like to play in big games and big atmospheres. But he had 2 ACL tears, right? Very similar to Michael Penix, who obviously started his career at Indiana. They were both recruited by DeBoer. Now at Alabama. Obviously, Penix bounced back and is just fine, and now I'm going to be probably starting for my Atlanta Falcons here in a few years. But yeah, so the big question mark there with Dex, also learning the playbook, obviously, where the other 2 guys in J.C. French saw a little bit of playing time last year. He was also a transfer from Memphis, but has been with the program for 2 years now. And David Dallas, a high school recruit that had a shoulder injury and took 2 years really to bounce back fully from that. But he's looking 100% and looking really good. So, other guys, Tyler Fromm, little brother of Jake Fromm from Georgia. He is a tight end transfer from Auburn. We have 2 defensive back transfers from Kennesaw State in the Atlanta area. They're moving up to FBS this year. One of those guys, I'm forgetting his name, but he was an all-conference player last year at the FCS level. So both of those guys should definitely possibly get a start, if not have some solid playing time and add depth to us. Really, though, I know when you sent these questions over, you added in coaches, like the biggest addition, right, in the offseason. Yep. I know I just name dropped a lot of guys, but I'm going to go with a coach, and that's going to be our offensive line coach. I think that's really going to be the difference maker, new face in the locker room, if you will. That's Zach Langford. He comes from Western Kentucky. This is 3rd straight year with a new offensive line coach. Both coaches the previous years left on their own accord to, for all things considered, greener pastures, definitely more money, and at the Power 4 level. So our offensive line coach last year, and TJ Woods, he's at BYU now in the Big 12. And then before that, Richard Owens, who had just a miracle season, I would say, coming in, probably one of the best gems that Clay Helton hired for that inaugural staff. Only gave up 7 sacks in 2022. We gave up 34 last year under TJ Woods. So enter Zach Langford. He comes from Western Kentucky. We have a lot of ties to Western Kentucky. Clay Helton's little brother Tyson coaches there. We've kind of exchanged some players and coaches in the last couple years. But, that's a guy, and that was a unit that threw the ball. Only 7 teams, including Georgia Southern, threw the ball more than Western Kentucky last year. They also run an air raid offense, and they only allowed 14 sacks. So I'll take 14 any day over 34. So that's the one that I'm really hoping. I don't know if we're gonna strike, lightning in a bottle twice with the Richard Owens hire, but if we can get anywhere close to that, I'll take it. And we've got some solid guys returning on the offensive line, as well as a key transfer in Justin Kenyuk from UNC Chapel Hill. So I definitely. Nice. Yeah, he might certainly add depth, but might get the start on the line.
Nice. Yeah. So we've got some players now named. What about and real quick, Chris Bolden says Chance Gamble. What position is he?
That was the DB that I was trying to.
Oh, that's the DB name. Okay, perfect. Yep. So with all that being said, with a quarterback that probably doesn't have the air raid experience as you guys have witnessed here lately, is that actually something some fans are looking forward to? Because I'm talking about the fan expectations here. They kind of looking forward to trying to run the ball a little bit more. And if they do you think that actually is something that's going to aid Georgia Southern? Because I know talking to Coach Helton at Media Days, he thinks you guys have what could amount to be a top 25 defense going into this season. Yeah. What about what the fans expect offensively as a whole, not just specific positions, but are we going to see a more even-keeled run pass and maybe a little bit more of a traditional Georgia Southern, run pass option look?
Yeah, probably not option, but definitely more even keel than we have been. Like I said, I mean, we had 570 pass attempts last year, over 600 pass attempts the year before with Cal Ventries. I see that number going down to like the low 500s, maybe even below to like high to mid 400s. I think, Cody and I had looked up what Aguilar did last year. We were talking about interceptions. Obviously, we threw 20 interceptions last year, led the nation in that category, had over 30 total when you add in fumbles. 19 of those were Bryn. We've got to cut down on the turnovers. And obviously a great way to do that is run the football. And we have honestly what might be our most stacked running back room since being an FBS program. I know that sounds kind of crazy because we've certainly had a fair share of great running backs including Matt Breida still in the NFL from kind of the early days of FBS under Willie Fritz. But depth wise, I would say we're probably the deepest we've ever been. I mean, Jalen White, he got hurt last year, would have been 1,000-yard rusher. I think as long as he stays healthy, he's easily 1,000-yard rusher. I think he can get closer to like the 1,300-yard mark. And then OJ Arnold, his backup, kind of the lightning to his thunder. I think he could have a really solid year. We have some depth behind him and David Bedinga and Terrence Gibbs, a younger guy, but have, had a lot of potential coming out of high school. So, I definitely see us running the ball more. I don't know if it'll be 50-50 or anywhere close to it, but I think even, after the last 2 years, I think Georgia Southern fans will be relieved with what they see on the field. I think it'll be more like that 65-35 or 70-30 kind of ratio.
Nice. Makes total sense. So now we're going to jump into the exciting part, which is typically how the season starts. And you guys kick it off with one hell of a matchup there in Statesboro, Georgia, as you play host to one of the G5 favorites going into this season in Boise State. Paulson's going to be absolutely jumping for this one. You also go on the road to Ole Miss at the end of September, and you've got a road game all the way across the United States over in Nevada for your second game. About the only one that probably everyone feels comfortable saying is an easy win would be South Carolina State. Everything else is either a total toss-up or something that Georgia Southern's not likely to be favored in. Are fans excited for this out-of-conference slate? Because it seems like it's rather good, especially when you're seeing a lot less of these really good G5 matchups early on in the season.
I would say they're excited for the whole schedule. The schedule is absolutely brutal. It's the toughest that we've had since 2014 when we moved up with you guys. Luckily we get with a conference slate, we get the toughest opponents, including App, including JMU, including Marshall at home. But with this out of conference slate, I mean, Boise State, they've been kind of the class of the group of five for the last 2 decades. I've been looking forward to this matchup since it was announced years ago. Unfortunately, COVID, we were supposed to go there to Boise, Idaho during 2020. That got canceled. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like that will be made up, but I'm glad that they're making the trip down to Statesboro for the first time. It's a huge matchup. It's nationally televised on ESPNU. Certainly the first nationally televised home opener that we've ever had. And probably the biggest home opener that we've ever had. Really looking forward to that. But like you said, I mean, they're coming in, if not a ranked program, they're receiving votes in a lot of the polls. Certainly if they win that game, they probably won't be ranked the next week. But that's tough. And then follow it up with Nevada, which I would say is the most important game probably. And honestly, I mean, obviously we've got to beat South Carolina State. But if we do lose to Boise State and we lose to Ole Miss, like most people would expect, we've got to find a way to win on the road in Nevada. And that's been really hard for us. We've only won 2 road games in 2 years of Clay Helton. First out of conference road game that we've won came last year against a really bad Ball State team. It's good. We just really struggle on the road. And certainly when we have to go for Reno, Nevada is definitely qualifies. So I would say that's a must win. South Carolina State's a must win. We'll see what happens at Ole Miss. We've played them well with a much worse team, I would say, in the past. And then, but Boise is the one that, everyone has their eyes on right now.
Yeah. And I think for good reason. And that, in a great way. And again, even if as an App fan, and maybe TJ disagrees with me, but I'm going to put my preference out there, which is I don't care who you are. I don't care how much of a rivalry we've got. Out of conference, I want you guys to beat everybody you play because, again,
100%.
There's one reason, and there's one reason. There's one way to have everyone continue to talk about Sun Belt being a dominant football conference, and that's by beating everybody outside of it. And so if we got teams that are dropping all these games outside of the conference, it doesn't do us any favors. We got 12 of 14 teams in bowls last year. Nobody wanted to give us any respect because they said, "Oh, you got a bunch of, mediocre teams in bowls," which
you're beating up each other and all that whole thing. Yeah. Right. Mount West, right? I mean, the 2 Mount West teams on here, and that's arguably the Americans in there too. But I think now with them getting, having their best teams poached from the American, it's really the Mountain West and the Sun Belt as the top of the class of the group of 5. So I think those are like must wins for all conference opponents. I know they don't play each other that often. We happen to get 2, but yeah, I would say that's super important. And then certainly the P4 games. I'm the same way. There's definitely a debate there, but when App is going and playing, the in-state North Carolina opponents or whoever it is, I begrudgingly root for App. So,
well, we appreciate it.
Yeah, we do. And then it was great catching up with you. It's cool to know that you're out in Colorado, and with today's technology and media, you can still be just as close to the program as if you're down the road. So it's awesome that you are a plethora of information as far as the Eagles are concerned. Thank you for jumping on with us tonight. And certainly before you get out of here, tell everybody where they can find you and more GATA talk.
Yeah, so it's GATAtalk.com. Also, GATA Talk podcast on all the social medias. We are not active on Instagram, but we do have an Instagram. Most active on Twitter, trying to get more active on Facebook, but same handle, GATA Talk podcast on all of those. And you can go to GATAtalk.com for our latest episodes and also anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Awesome.
Nice. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Matt. And I'll be continuing to check you guys out along the season. We'll have to do something when there's some little rivalry or something game.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. No big deal, right?
Little group.
Yeah. No big deal. Well, thanks a lot, Matt, and we'll see you down the road here shortly.
Cool, fast. Yep, thanks. Appreciate it.
I'm telling you, man, there's people that know the ins and outs of every single team in this conference, and we've got 2 teams left. We've got the Thundercast helping us preview the Marshall Thundering Herd, hosted by Russ Livingood and Katie Hudnall. Welcome to the show, Russ. Glad you guys are here again tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on. You guys do a great job. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. We are too. Definitely got to hear from the Thundering Herd guys because we know the history and tradition behind Marshall and the excitement that those fans and that fan base can bring each and every season. But speaking of that, what 1 or 2 guys maybe do you guys think have been your biggest additions either through the portal or for recruiting going into this season?
I would have to go portal with this, and I think an entire revamp of our wide receiver room. We have so many different weapons that have been brought in, and with a totally new offense, which we may or may not get into with one of your questions, but bringing in an air raid offense, you got to have a bunch of good quality receivers. So that room got hit big. You've got Christian Fitzpatrick, a 6'4" outside wide receiver that came over from Michigan State Tyshawn Doc Chapman from North Carolina, more of a small 5'9", 5'10", 5'11" burner, and also familiar with the air raid. And then Elijah Metcalf, leading receiver from MTSU, coming over. Very small, 5'6", 165, 180, somewhere through there, wherever he's going to end up on the weight going into the season. But just an absolute stud in receiving. So adding those plus more to the wide receiver room, I'd say, is our biggest addition.
Absolutely. I feel like you guys have had some really good wide receivers, especially back with that Notre Dame victory that was so prevalent. Obviously, the defense played a big part in that one too.
Yeah.
But definitely some wideouts that have stood out. And, some guy named Randy Moss too back in the day.
He did okay.
Yeah, he was all right. Speaking of the season and coming into it, what is maybe your specific thought process as far as this team is concerned, either compared to last season or just overall? What are your feelings going in, where you think you guys are going to end up?
Well, it's nearly a stacked deck. I mean, you've got a very big out-of-conference schedule coming up. You're back-to-back, even though there's a bye week in between, back-to-back games on the schedule. You got at Virginia Tech, at Ohio State. A lot of people nationwide are going to pencil you in to be 0-2 for those two games. So you start figuring in your record. The Sun Belt East has proven over the past 2 years to be very formidable. So it's going to be a hard slate to do. I think a lot of people nationally have us in that 6-6, 7-5 area. It almost feels like 8-4 would be a very good season. So it's just going to be a challenge to go up against this schedule with the quality of opponents that we're facing, but also installing an air raid offense year one. Everyone's been impacted by it, but we have our challenges with the transfer portal. We've lost some pieces and had to add 40 some members to the team. So it's going to be tough, but I look for us to surprise some people.
Absolutely. I love the thought process because we know Marshall never seems to stay down long. So I'm very optimistic too. I mean, I obviously met you, and I'm sure everyone doesn't know that, but I got to meet you luckily at a game against NC State last season. And maybe people see the final score, but I'm telling you, you were there live. The game felt a lot closer than it maybe had appeared or whatnot. I mean, obviously towards the very, very end, it got a little gone, but you see the final score as a 1-touchdown game against what's ended up being a very good NC State team, even coming into this season as well.
Yeah.
So what are the thought process of most of the fans? Would you say most of them are thinking along the same lines, at least get to bowl eligibility? A lot of them maybe hopeful that it comes out even better than that. Some people looking on the downside. I mean, what's the thought process behind what you're hearing from the fan base?
I obviously follow our fans and have our pulse of our fans more in tune than any other fan base in the nation, just by the nature of being a fan and covering the team that we do. I don't know if our fan base is the same as other fan bases, but we have such a mixed bag this year. I've seen everything from we'll be lucky to win 3 games to I think we're going to surprise some people and maybe finish 10-2. That is a huge, huge discrepancy between the ceiling and the floor. I feel like most people have kind of settled in the middle. Obviously, that's going to happen with your ceiling and floor, but I mean exactly in the middle, around that 6-6, 7-5, somewhere around there mark.
Very fair adjustment. And I feel like a lot of the Sunbelt fan bases are kind of similar in that regard. You've got your really high hopes, and you've got your really low guys who just think nothing we did right last year and it's not going to get any better. It's kind of crazy how you can have those different spectrums all in the same fan bases, but it's why we all follow along and have fun with this, right?
I'm closer to the ceiling. I'm not saying 10-2, but I am very much more optimistic and thinking that we will win some games that people have penciled in as losses. But I look a lot more optimistic in that get a winning record, really good chance of winning the division or having a chance to win the division in the last week or so, and going to a good bowl. I think it's all well within reach.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think people forget. Again, we mentioned that NC State game. You were 3-0 before that game. Not necessarily blowing everybody out of the water, but you were 3-0. You go 4-0 and you beat NC State at their place. I think you're very possibly, you're at very least receiving votes category. You might have even been ranked had you won that game. And I think people see the little trip up towards the end of last season, and I think they're forgetting a lot of that, just how close that Marshall team was.
Yeah.
And also in a few of those games. I mean, yeah, the win-loss record wasn't great, but those games, most of them were not really blowouts. So,
and in that NC State game, there were some key injuries to some of our superstar players that really kind of derailed. It's kind of a what if. Maybe could have pulled that one out if you didn't have as many injuries as you had.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't disagree there at all. And let me just tell you, like I said, and being there in person, you could tell the NC State fans were scared of what was transpiring on the field. A lot of frustration from I was seating kind of close to the Marshall section by just like a section or two off, but I was seated all around NC State fans. So I definitely heard a lot of the frustrations coming out of that team that day. But here's a look at your out-of-conference slate. So you've got Stony Brook to open the season August 31st at home. Then you go on the road, like you mentioned, 2 straight games against very tough opponents, especially with where a lot of people think VT is going to come out and be a lot better this year as they kind of improve towards the end of last season. You go on the road there September 7th. Follow that up with, just probably one of the favorites to win the national title this year, going to the Horseshoe at Ohio State September 21st before rounding out your out-of-conference slate at home versus Western Michigan on September 28th. And before you give me what you're looking at as maybe your biggest game or one you're most excited for, is there any real history with the Western Michigan matchup? I'm not necessarily sure I remember. Marshall's done a lot with them in the past.
Yeah, so we were in the MAC together when Marshall came back up from 1AA, which is what it was called at the time. We went back up to the MAC. Western Michigan was on the West, so we didn't do as many cross-division games. It wasn't like an annual matchup, but famously we went up against them in the 1999 MAC championship game at Huntington, and we were down crazy score. I don't remember exactly if it was like 30-8 or something like that, but at halftime, and we ended up coming back and won with about 1 to 2 seconds left on a Chad Pennington basically wheeled us to victory. So there's some history. Yes.
You've had a couple quarterbacks wheel you to victory. Obviously Leftwich being carried down the field by his lineman was like an iconic moment that I'll never forget, just watching that stuff. Obviously Pennington, and then give a little thought process about his son, who's obviously now playing for you guys as well. I mean, there's a lot of quarterback controversy or expectation of who's going to be the guy, I guess, going into the season. Is there anything you're hearing or feeling maybe before this season gets started as far as the quarterback position is concerned?
Still wide open as we record today, but within the next week of by the end of this week, you're going to probably have someone named as the starter. And Cole Pennington is definitely in the mix, but I do not know, who's going to be 1, 2, 3 on the depth chart at this point.
Gotcha. I think there's actually probably about half the teams in the Sun Belt I feel like are in that same boat at this point. So let me get back to the original question after going long-winded on you a few times.
That's all right.
Which matchup? I mean, I would assume it's not one of the home matchups, unfortunately, but those are 2 huge away games. I would assume it's going to be one of those 2.
Well, let me tell you that Virginia Tech, I'm looking forward to. I've been there before. We've had them on the ropes there before, should have won there before. Ohio State, we've been there 2004 to be exact. If anyone wants to look up that box score, we had them beat and at least had them to where we were going into overtime, and a series of follies that everything went wrong for us and right for them. with about a minute and a half to go, Mike Nugent ended up kicking a 55-yard field goal that was good for an additional 10 yards for them to get out of the horseshoe with a victory instead of getting beat by my beloved Marshall Hurd. But having said that, the one I'm looking forward to the most, believe it or not, is Saturday, August 31st, and there's a couple of reasons. One, it is our first look at the team this year, which is going to be totally different with the new offense and all that. But also, we do it up right in Huntington. Our first tailgate out of the year for the Thundercast is by far the biggest tailgate on campus, but also all year long. We are going to have 2, maybe 3 smokers brought in for this game. You will see videos and pictures on our social media. We have hundreds of people coming by our tailgate, and it is just absurd how hard we tailgate for that first game. That's the one I'm looking forward to because of all that tailgating camaraderie and getting to see my team for the first time this year.
Nice. I love that answer, actually. And also just getting back in the groove of it. Like you said, first tailgate, do it real big, get the people excited, hopefully win comfortably, obviously, is the hope there, and probably the expectation as well.
It is.
So, is there any last thoughts you want to share with us? We really, again, appreciate you and KD and what you guys do. I listen to you guys all the time. Obviously, I've got lucky enough to meet you, like I said. If anybody watching or listening hasn't checked out the Thundercast, please do. The production value is absolutely tremendous and do a great job covering Marshall. And at the very least, you need to check them out when they're going up against your team because you're going to hear that side of it. And they're essentially experts at what they do. So please check them out. Russ, if you want to tell the fine people where they can find you all across the social medias as well.
Yeah, we're at Thundercast_pod on Twitter. That's where we're going to do most of our engagement. You can also look for us at The Thundercast on Facebook. We're not as active there, just posting links to our episodes. Follow us on YouTube. You can go to thundercast.online for our website. We have articles. We have a visitor's guide if you ever find yourself coming up to Huntington for a game. We try to get into a little bit of everything, but I want to sign off by saying I want to thank you for what you do for the Sun Belt and G5. I hate that term teams because as you saw what I posted earlier on Twitter about national teams just do not get the facts right, but you guys take extra care to cover our teams in the Sun Belt, and we thank you for everything that you guys do. And anyone that is a Marshall fan watching this because of my segment on here, make sure to follow Sun Belt Syndicate and all the good things that they do.
Appreciate it, sir. Game respects game, right?
That's right. That's right.
Oh, man, Russ, it was great. I wish we could do longer, but obviously we're trying to get all 7 teams in 2 of the best divisions in all of college football, as we know. So
that's right.
Thanks for coming on, man, and we'll see you again real soon.
All right, thanks.
Next up tonight, we've got the Strut podcast, who covers Coastal Carolina football. And from them, we've got Joe on tonight. They also have Chili and TD, who were unable to make it, unfortunately. But we've got the man, the myth, the legend, calling Coastal from its inception. Joe, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey, Dominic, thanks for having me on. It's a great opportunity for us. And Chili, TD, they have some family obligations tonight. And so I'm not in that boat with them. So I said, you know what, I'll stand up and take one for the team. We'll get the Strut on here and we'll talk some Coastal here in 2024.
Absolutely. That is what we love to hear about. And there's a lot of excitement, obviously, with who's been brought in and, the shape and the mold of the offense probably continuing to evolve under second-year head coach Tim Beck. Who do you think is either the biggest addition to the team specifically as far as players are concerned, or maybe even a coach somewhere along the way that you think is maybe going to change the outcome of where Coastal Carolina football ends up this season?
Well, what I would say is the coaching staff stayed intact. So I think we're probably looking at some players who transferred in. And the first one I would talk about would probably be Noah Kim. He's a redshirt senior who transferred in at the quarterback spot for Michigan State. He started 5 games for them last year, and then he got hurt and didn't play again the rest of the season. And so he hit the portal after the year, and he came in And obviously with what he did in Big Ten country, now he comes to us, and it will be really interesting to see him and Ethan Vasco. I think will be a great battle, as they've gotten into the second, third week of camp here. Vasco, of course, was the starter down the stretch for us last year. He went 3-1 as a starter when we lost both Grayson McCall to injury against Arkansas State, and then Jarrett Guest stepped in, and he looked all world against Marshall, and then unbeknownst to a lot of people, got his shoulder hurt in that game and then was never really right. And so Ethan stepped in and went 3-1 again. Like I said, down the stretch, he threw 7 touchdowns again and 1 interception, and was great out there in the Hawaii Bowl, the MVP out there, and really led us to a good finish when we really needed it at that spot. But I think Noah Kim will come in at that quarterback spot along with him and challenge him, and that's one of the big transfers that we got on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side, I would say maybe Diamante Diggs, the defensive end from Youngstown State. He I think will fight for some playing time at that defensive end spot. Najon Barber is a defensive lineman from South Carolina State. He came in and, again, we needed to do what we did last year on the defensive side of the ball, which is bring in a bunch of bodies. And we did that. And hopefully we'll hit some home runs like we did last season. Of course, this is the age of the transfer portal and guys moving all around. And when you have to replace a bunch of guys, you got to go out and find some guys, and you got to do it in a hurry. And we found a lot of them, and we have 66 new players on the team. And of course, a lot of those are freshman class that we signed, and we've done a really good job recruiting the last couple of years. But again, those guys that I mentioned, and there could be a whole lot of other ones out there too. I really haven't had a chance to see a lot of what's going on in preseason. But those are just, 3 guys that I can think of maybe off the top of my head that will come in and hopefully be a factor for us here in 24.
Absolutely. I think you're right. I think a lot of that stuff, especially on the offensive side of the ball, like you said, defense, it's a little bit more of an unknown. I feel like just depends a lot on the system and everything that is being run about how far you can or how quickly you can bring those guys along in that aspect. But what is the thought process either for you guys personally at the Strut podcast or maybe what you're hearing about the fan base as far as expectations or outlook for the season going in?
Expectations are always high in Conway. We've won 39 games in the last 4 seasons. We've had a great run. It's one of the greatest 4-year runs that we've ever had at Coastal since we started football in 2003. And so the expectations are always going to be very high. Now, the coaches picked us 3rd in the preseason Sun Belt East poll, so we'll see how that pans out behind App State and James Madison. Of course, a couple of the preseason mags had us even, lower than that in their preseason rankings. So, no one, however, thinks that, around Coastal that this is going to be an off year, even though I kind of get the sensation, I get the feeling that there are a lot of people out there that think Coastal may take a step back a little bit because we don't have quite the experienced team that we had last season. We don't have a lot of the same guys that, came along when Jamie Chadwell was here as the coach and had this unbelievable winning culture that Coach Beck, Tim Beck came in and built on last season when we went 8-5 and had a great run in the East and almost won that. And then, of course, went out and won our second bowl game. But expectations at Coastal and Conway are always going to be very high. There's a lot of excitement around the program. We've got an indoor facility that's, it's going up. It's going up like a weed right now. It's going so fast. It's unbelievable. And, we really need that, and just a lot of stuff going on around the program, excitement, expectations again. And, again, it all starts in 17 days, and hopefully we can stay healthy. We can get hot, guys can play well, and things will come together again. You just don't know right now in this day and age how all of these new faces, how all of these guys will come in and get inculcated in the culture and take us, hopefully from 8 wins to, 9, 10, 11, 12, and hopefully a Sun Belt championship appearance.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Coastal fans are certainly hungry for another one of those. Speaking of that indoor practice facility, first of all, it's 100. It's going to be a full size field underneath there. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then I've heard is the rumor, or maybe it's a fact, that once that's complete, they're also rerouting the road between there and the field, and maybe expanding the field in the future. Is that factual, or is that a rumor at this point?
That's kind of what the long range plan. That's what the long range. What the vision kind of is, because I think eventually, we're going to have to do something there with University Boulevard to kind of move it out of the way. Yeah. And then be able to do some things on that other end zone with the stadium. So, yeah, long range planning, I can kind of speculate on that a little bit. I mean, our university president, Dr. Benson, came on with us in the spring, and he's got this unbelievable plan coming up. We've got a new basketball arena that's coming online here really soon. A new director of athletics is, really taking charge and really spearheading a lot of projects. And so, I mean, we're going to have to do some things to, if we're going to ever enclose and expand that end of the stadium where the scoreboard is right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I've only been once so far. Plan to go again this year, at least for the App State Coastal game, because the atmosphere there was phenomenal the last time I was there. I mean, literally shoulder to shoulder just to walk through certain sections, and hostile, which I won't take my kid to, but I loved it. I love that stuff. So a blast when I was there, and a lot of other improvements around the stadium as well right now. I believe you guys are putting like ribbon boards around the entirety of the thing. Not just outside, but also inside. It seems like you said, there's a lot of good plans and a lot of interesting and cool stuff coming up for Coastal, the program, and certainly the fans and the local population there in Conway to really look forward to, certainly. Let's jump into a little bit of the actual games that are going to be played within that stadium, and obviously two on this schedule here outside of it. Is there a certain one that maybe either you, Joe, are specifically looking forward to, or that you think the fan base has circled? I have a feeling I know which one that may be, but I want to see if it's different from what you think.
Well, certainly the one that jumps out at me here is Virginia, and I imagine that's got to jump out to our fan base too. The only the second, well, I guess now Power Four is what we got going on today. Who knows what's going to wind up, what these conferences are going to look like tomorrow if we had this conversation. But Virginia from the Atlantic Coast Conference coming in, and again that was scheduled several years ago. It's kind of a 2-for-1 kind of thing. We would go to Charlottesville twice, they would come to Conway once, and our fans, I'm certainly looking forward to that game, to get a Virginia team to come to Conway. Kansas came to us back in 21, and we had our way with them. So that was kind of the first. And then of course BYU, not a power, quote unquote team at the time, but we beat them when they were ninth in the country. And so having Virginia come to our place, that's kind of a big deal for us. Jacksonville State going there to open the year. That is a fascinating opening game, and I think maybe one of the toughest. I would almost say it's tougher than what we went to UCLA, last year. I think this one's going to be a little more difficult than going out there. I mean, we had a great chance to beat UCLA, but I think Jack State with Rich Rod and that offense they run at high octane, they're going to sling it around and they're going to go up and down that field. We beat them last year in Conway, and one of the more underrated wins that we had, quite frankly. But now we have to go there to open the season in 17 days. That's going to be a good one. Going to Temple, to go play there where the Eagles play. That's kind of a neat trip. I kind of hate that I won't be able to go on that, but certainly will be watching. But I think if any game that you take right there, I'm going to kind of do my finger around the graphic right there, the V right there with the cross sabers. Yeah, that's it right there. That's it right there. I think if any game that our fan base and I am looking forward to is Saturday, September 21st, when the Cavaliers come to town.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that at all. And as some people have seen, the ACC is quite literally telling some of its members not to go on the road and play these games. So the fact that you guys still have one,
they are.
Yeah,
yes, they are, and that's a shame too. That's a shame.
Absolutely. And what's funny is, the specific team we're talking about here with Virginia and NC State playing Virginia. NC State had App State on the schedule. They dropped App State for a out-of-conference game against Virginia. It doesn't make sense. And the Coastal's in the same boat, to be totally honest with you. It's all the same. Both Coastal and App State routinely finish the season ranked and strength of schedule harder or better than Virginia. You're dropping a G5 game for a Power 4 game that literally could do worse for you. Whatever.
Well, look at those two North Carolina App State games, the one in Chapel Hill, the one in Boone. I mean, how good were those games? I mean, if you were just a casual football fan and you really didn't care and you got locked in on that game, you were watching that game. You were watching both of those games. I mean, they were just incredible football games, right? You know, I mean, just unbelievable football games. And who cares, what G5 or P5 or whatever the heck they were great football games. I mean, that's what college football fans want to see, and that's what college football needs. They need those kind of games. And, and it, like you say, it's unfortunate, but you're correct, in that you drop a G5 or a P5 non-conference kind of thing it's silliness. It's just, and they wind up not being, the rankings wind up reflecting that wasn't really probably a good move for you to begin with, but
nope, not at all.
We will take a game with Virginia and hold on to it and savor it and hopefully get a win in that one. And, who knows what, 25 and 26 and beyond that bring as far as those kind of games are concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know I'm hoping for a W that week. I know pretty much. Obviously, with what we do here, we hope the Sun Belt, as much as we like to consider every week like a hate week, outside of the conference, I want us all to win because that just strengthens what we do here. As we know, 12 teams out of a 14-team conference in bowl games last year helps reflect the fact that what we've been saying is obviously true. So hopefully we can continue on that path. Joe, I know, again, we're trying to get to all the teams tonight, so we unfortunately do want to have to wrap it up, but is there any closing words? And obviously tell the fans where they can go and find more of the Strut content across the interwebs.
Well, we're on Facebook, X, and Instagram, the Strut Podcast, all of those. We're also a part of the College Huddle Network, a network of over 100 podcasts out there, a proud member of that. So Chili, TD, and myself, you can find us on all the social media platforms, but the Strut Podcast on Twitter, X, which is Twitter. One and the same, right? Yep. X, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us out there. So we record on Wednesdays and we drop usually late in the week. So I'd love for fans to give us a listen to keep up with what's going on with Coastal Carolina.
Absolutely. Please go out there and check that out. Again, more intrusive or more specialized coverage across Coastal Carolina and their schedule as it comes out this year. So thank you again to Joe. And that's going to wrap it up for the East preview. Thank you for everyone tuning in or listening to this the next day on audio form. Don't worry, we are only halfway through the conference. It's a reason we split this up because this one's really right at 2 hours now. And we want to make sure to keep it short by still covering everything. Obviously, if you want the game-by-game breakdown of these teams, please go out and find these experts that we've just had on here and focused with. Their coverage tonight is going to be exponentially better than what you've heard here because they can give you a game-by-game breakdown, and they are all either already have done that or are about to do that as the season is about to kick off. As far as we are concerned, again, East covered tonight, the West coming next week. TJ and I are excited to bring you what seems to be a very elevated and expanded expectation of the West coming into this season, especially there at the top with defending champion Troy, Texas State, Arkansas State, Louisiana, all expected to do big things. Some others below them trying to make a big jump to stay up there at the top of the race for the West. That is all for us. We appreciate you all tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.